at the Annenberg School. We're very pleased to welcome you to this special event with the 2015 Executive in Residence, Mitch Matthews. Mitch had a long and distinguished career as the Chief Marketing Officer and Senior Vice President at Microsoft Corp. And she's no longer in that position, but she's here in LA, based here in LA, and spends a lot of time angel investing and investing in companies, particularly in the tech industry. And as part of her residence, she's been with us all week, and we've had a series of really wonderful interactions, and Mitch has really astounded us with her generosity of spirit, as well as the depth of insight she has about how marketing is helping to drive this tremendous groundswell within our field that we're playing a part in. So Mitch is going to extend those insights by speaking with us today through a presentation she calls the Marketing Communication Revolution. What are the implications? So join me in welcoming Mitch Matthews.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for having me. It's just been, I'm not spinning you, it's been an absolute delight to be here this week. The energy and to learn about the friggin' awesome work you guys are doing, seriously. So thank you both to Gabe and Chris for being just the most wonderful hosts. So I'm going to talk to you about marketing communications and where it's going. And I really don't think it's an overstatement to say that there has been more innovation that's happened in the last several years in this field that has happened in the last 50. That I am super envious of all of you here, because you're going to leave this place at some point, graduate, and then go into some form of industry. And what you're going to experience if you go into the field of marketing is just going to blow your mind compared to when I look at my career. So to underscore, to give you some context why this is such a revolution, let me give you just a very brief history lesson to paint the canvas on why this is important. So you can't see that too well, but it took 50 years for half of the US population to get a telephone. It took 70 years for that same population to get televisions. And then, mind-blowingly so, it took Facebook 5 years to reach to 1 billion people. And now they're at 1.4 billion. It's just absolute staggering number when you pause and think we can reach. If we wanted to target that many people and we had enough money, we could do so because of breakthroughs like this. On top of that, Apple pioneered the smartphone, 2007. We now have 1.7 billion people walking around with these things. And it's not an overstatement to say that we're all carrying supercomputers, what these devices can actually do. So marry that social networks with everyone having a device with the statistic that we now have 3 billion people online around the world. Now, if you're a pessimist, you might be saying, well, what about the 4 billion others? We need to get to them. I'm sure we will at some point. But just think about that many screens, the opportunity, those people either sitting in front of a phone or sitting in front of a desktop or sitting in front of a tablet. Our ability as marketers to reach them is simply staggering. So it's at least, hundreds of times more the addressable market than a marketer had, but certainly when I was growing up. So why is this important? Here's why, and this is just advertising. This is numbers that we know are fact. The global advertising industry is $500 billion. That's marketers around the planet spending money on ads. Now that doesn't take into account every other dollar that marketers spend doing things outside of advertising. So we're talking about a very, very big number, very big industry here that is on the verge of getting redefined. Now, of that 500 billion, there are basically 5 big dogs. And these are the 5 big holding companies on this planet that the lion's share of that money goes through. And the holding companies, please forgive me if I go too much on too many sidebars, but I don't know how much people know about the structure of the industry. So a holding company is that. It's not integrated. It's a company, let's say WPP, based in England, the largest one. They have hundreds of agencies that are not integrated, PR agencies, ad agencies, technical agencies, media agencies, and so on. And they take a steady 8% growth. Most of their business is not in the digital world. It's, I would say, the traditional world, which is advertising, print, radio, and so on and so forth. These guys combined account for the top 2,000 agencies in the world employing 500,000 people. So if you think about anything that you've seen as high profile, really great work, it's probably come from one of these, and apologize to those outside of the 5 who would give me a hard time for that. So I'm just a little sidebar for you here on that spend in the United States, because I think this is very interesting, kind of instructive as you think about where things are going. Now, look at that number. $70 billion in the United States alone was spent on television advertising. And at this point, you might be thinking, well, who watches television? I don't. You know, that must be my mom and dad. So hold that point just for a moment about the demise of the TV industry. The Super Bowl was the most watched television show in history. 114 million people watched that. So those advertisers might say, hey, you know, I reached a very big target audience and it was highly effective for me. That said, we are seeing, for the first time this year, there's this process in television, it's called the upfronts, where the big TV networks do a dog and pony show. They bring out all their stars. You know, ABC would bring out the cast of Modern Family, all the cast from their pilots, and they do a big show about why these are going to be a hit, why advertisers need to get involved. And then at the end of that upfront week, everyone presents. The big advertisers normally cut deals. So they cut deals for example, when I had my job, we always wanted to do the Final Four on CBS. But in order to get the Final Four, CBS would often slip you a Mickey, so to speak, that says you can buy the Final Four, but you've also got to buy these 3 pilots we're doing. Who knows if they're any good, you know, going to be successful or crappy, but you know that's part of the deal. So that's what's going. So, you know, there's some funny stuff that goes on in these numbers. But the fact is we are seeing TV ratings decline. The shape is like this. We are seeing subscriptions decline. And in that upfront money, this was the first time that all that upfront money didn't get committed to TV, and some of it moved to digital. So the next category is there's $40 billion being spent on digital today. In digital and mobile, it's growing like this. Absolutely, that number year on year is getting larger and larger. Staggeringly still, $30 billion being spent on print. But I would caveat that just in the last 8 years, print has shrunk by $10 billion. And that $10 billion, you can guess where the $10 billion moved to, digital. And then radio and outdoor, still quite healthy businesses. So all of that, however, is oh, actually, before I get to this point, just a little sidebar, because this is so interesting. 41% of all that digital spend I showed you, this is around the globe, goes to one company. Very large number indeed. So if ever there was a question in your mind, who's dominating in terms of advertising, the slide speaks for itself. So all this is being turned on its head. You've got that as the backdrop. You've got a lot of money. You've got brands spending a lot of money. You've got established companies within this industry. You've got some dominant forces clearly emerging in digital. But there's a number of trends happening that are going to redefine and really change the landscape of this. Okay, the first one is obviously building on the fact that increasingly we're all using smartphones is mobile. This is going to be the first year that we spend more time on our devices in apps than actually on our desktops looking at web pages. You know, and it was only, what, 10 years ago, the internet, what, 1995, when most of us started to get online. You know, that's quite an incredible journey when you think about the paradigm shift that's happening. So we're seeing obviously a change in people's behavior. This one, I love this chart because it really shows the challenge for people who are going to try to market to the future. You see the middle column is people over 75, and this is, I think the question was, you know, if it disappeared, what would you miss most? The lion's share of people over 75 firmly about television, but when you add in all adults, you see that this is a super large share still. Then go to kids age 16, sorry, I shouldn't say kids, people age 16 to 24, and by far it's all about their smartphone. So people's media consumption, viewing habits, lifestyle are really changing as a result of these devices. We are also seeing a staggering growth. I mean, just look at this hockey stick in the consumption of video. And what you're seeing here, this is millions of terabytes being consumed per month on video. And there is one mothership in terms of video. YouTube, as I'm sure you all know, owned by Google, has 1 billion subscribers. They are by far the mothership of where most videos consumed. There's a staggering 300 hours per minute being uploaded to YouTube as we speak. Quite incredible. And YouTube takes 45% of the advertising revenue that's off of what's presented on YouTube. And YouTube has done some pretty amazing things. I mean, it's created superstars out of nowhere. Mere quote-unquote kids with a great idea and a camera on their computer have become these superstars. I mean, if you look at the followers that some of these people have, and it's just come out of nowhere. This isn't, you know, being groomed within CBS. PewDiePie, I don't know precisely, but it's around 8 million. PewDiePie is earning, after Google takes its 45% cut, from just, you know, the goofy, geeky, entertaining stuff that he's putting up there. And these people are now talent agencies. You've got CAA and WME and Awesomeness, you know, all these people vying for these guys because it's not just their video. There's a little startup that I wish I'd got into that is now creating an app for each of these people. So, you know, you can download the PewDiePie app. And so he then has that direct relationship with his community where he's bypassing Google and not getting that cut. So it's very interesting to see what's happening here. And a lot of these people also want to get off YouTube. You know, it's been wonderful for them, but you're also seeing them emerge onto other forums. Just this week, it was announced Young Turks is now going on Facebook, and they are going to have a series for Facebook. So we're just going to see these stars emerge and move beyond just the YouTube network. Netflix, another phenomena. Interesting story, right? Started 15 years ago as just selling, as lending DVDs. Now it's, there was 1 billion hours of video Netflix streamed just last quarter. And I think that they now have a bigger subscription than HBO to give you a sense of how this is growing and how it's dominant. And by far, the lion's share of content being consumed on Netflix is via a mobile device. The other part of mobile that I think is terribly exciting, aside from you know, what I just outlined there on how people are consuming it and it's really dominant amongst young people, is the location-enabled stuff that is going to allow us to do. A couple of things I want to touch on here. One is this concept called geo-targeting. I don't know if people have come across this, but that's the notion of you send something to, all you need is GPS and an app. So you will know where someone is, and you will send them a message via an app. Say you're in an app in a store, an ad pops up, and it's something very germane to where you are. An example of this, 1-800-Flowers has done a lot of pilots on this, that they will target people physically in front of jewelry stores in malls with an offer for flowers, on the assumption, obviously, that if you're looking in a jewelry store, there's probably an event or something coming up, a gift that you're going to give for someone, so you're probably most likely to be in the market for flowers too. So things like that, you can see how things like that could really resonate because you're delivering something to a potential customer in an environment that they're actually open to receiving that, and it would be helpful to them. Another I think just terribly exciting aspect of this is beacons. They look like that thing up there, and there's so many pilots in this going on. A couple of examples here is fast food is experimenting with this a lot. I mean, one of the barriers in fast food in terms of doing mobile is you don't know when you're going to get there. You can order it, and you know, we don't want anything cold sitting there. I don't want my pumpkin latte being tepid by the time that I get there. Well, the things that beacons can do is, as soon as I walk through that door, let's say we're in a Starbucks, as soon as I walk through the door, they know to start making my pumpkin latte. And so in fast foods, I mean, I'm going on Wendy's board. It's like so interesting, the implications of this stuff, because it changes the fast food line. It changes how you design counters and so on. Another great example of people using beacons, and this one kind of blows your mind, but there's some pilots being done. Say I go into Nordstrom and I look at Prada handbags. This beacon, because I had the Nordstrom app, I've got to have the Nordstrom app for this to work. Nordstrom knows I've looked at Prada handbags. If I then tomorrow, a week later, a month later, I go onto YouTube, there's a Finnish company that will serve me up that Prada handbag ad, that handbag that I was looking at, that they can correlate you across devices in this way. So you just when you start to think, hey, what's possible here with both geo-targeting and location, purely because of mobile, it's pretty astounding. The second aspect of if you like, this shift, one of the major, I call open systems, it's called Manner of Things, but if you think about it, the largest taxi company in the world doesn't own one taxi. The largest hotel chain in the world doesn't have to put soaps and shampoos in bathrooms. I'm talking about Uber. I'm talking about Airbnb. The notion that you're not physically contained by like a wall around you, that ideas can come anywhere, but it's facilitated by a technology infrastructure. And we're seeing this same shift happen in the advertising industry. So currently the model is talent gets hired in a physical location. Let's say you work for Burson Marsteller, you're a PR firm, you're paid the $300 an hour, whatever you are, and you have a career in that. However, if you're a client of Burson Marsteller, you can only get that talent. But you may be interested in talent way beyond those boundaries, but right now you have a retainer to that agency. So this is the notion of crowdsourcing talent, irrespective of location, irrespective of geography, so anyone's best ideas can be put to a marketing brief. And there's a great example of this company called MoFilm, and they have about 15,000 filmmakers around the world. They're not on salary or anything, they're just part of their community. And PlayStation, this is a true story, it's like an incredible story. Christmas, PlayStation's agency, I should know this, oh, it's BBH. So PlayStation's agency, so you know, PlayStation, Xbox, everyone always does the seminal ad for the Christmas period. So they put their brief out to the agency, BBH came back, and they just weren't happy with the brief that the work that they got back from BBH, and said, yeah, you know, not that concept, can you come up with something else? And meanwhile, as BBH is doing that, they say, hey, why don't we put our brief out on MoFilm and crowdsource and just see what ideas we come back. Comes back, PlayStation sees this killer ad that a filmmaker, I think they're in Canada, this is like a one-man band, it's not like a big ad agency. Filmmaker makes, BBH comes back, they still don't like the creative, so they say to BBH, would you make this brief, this come back via MoFilm, to which BBH says, nah, we're not going to do that, which is staggering in itself. And this is the agency they had on retainer, you know, millions of dollars. So what they ended up doing, that ad that you might have seen it just before Christmas, it's two kids on bikes in various games. They go through a bunch of PlayStation titles. That was like completely crowdsourced for next to no money. I mean, these prices when you're crowdsourcing, it's like 10 grand, 8 grand, 20 grand. So they got like this killer idea that ran worldwide that actually bypassed their agency, and you know, and they just had a random set of production people create it. So to give you an idea how, you know, you can see how that might disintermediate the agency model. The other thing about open systems, it has implications for brands themselves, because now these tools are actually widely available, and because of smartphones and technology being accessible, brands are now able to create content, really interesting content that before they would have to go to a big organization to do. So we're seeing some of this stuff emerge when brands are becoming media companies and publishing and distributing content themselves, because facilitated by these open systems. The third aspect of massive change, obviously goes without saying, is social. Just to throw out some numbers here. So Facebook's now at 1.4 million. Twitter, there's 500 million tweets going a day. Pinterest, 70 million people, 80% of those women. YouTube, 1 billion. I could keep going, but when the scale of this thing is actually quite staggering. Now, a couple of things about social. One, we are all telegraphing so much about our lives, and that data is being collected. So we're saying what we like, what we don't like, who our friends are, what we want, what we've bought, where we're going. We might say where we live. We might have intimated how much money we have. We might have said, you know, what our children are. It might have said something about our health. We are just like, by virtue of these things, and we're doing it independently, and I think for the most part, none of us think about the big picture when you group all these things together. But one, we're just leaving traces around the web of our lives. And the second thing that's happening here is like every human being now can be an expert on a topic and profess their opinion. They can give feedback, they can comment, they can become superstars like those folks on YouTube. So that barrier to entry for all of us to be pundits, for all of us to be experts is basically zero, and we're seeing it on droves, which again is a you know, it's a double-edged sword because it gives everyone a bully pulpit if they want to trash someone, but at the same time, if you're a brand and you can harness this in the right way, what an awesome way just to have an ongoing dialogue with your customers. Now, another part of social, to build on the point I said earlier, about brands becoming media companies. And we're increasingly seeing this. I'm showing you here a slide of Red Bull, which I just, you know, it is the mothership rock star of how to do it and do it right. Because what this company has done has taken its vision, married its vision for the company with its messaging, with its content creation and distribution. And it's remarkable because whilst you never see, I shouldn't say never, because rarely see a piece of content that says buy Red Bull, here's what Red Bull's about. It is the staple on half pipes and dance clubs around the world because they engage their target audience in such a fashion that like uniquely speaks to them. Now Red Bull has done it amazingly well, and they have become a media, they set out to become a media company as a result. But it just shows you that other brands could do this. They don't have to do it at the same scale, but it's table stakes now to be on social networks as a brand, and it's just how far do you want to push this stuff. The fourth category is programmatic. That's seemingly boring, but it's actually a very profound idea. Programmatic, actually let me take a step back before I tell you what it is. The media industry, so all those people buying ads, that industry, it used to be the way that you would buy media space for your ads is faxes, phone calls, one-on-one. I transact with CBS, and I have to go to NBC and do it, then I have to go to Time Magazine, then I have to go to the Wall Street Journal. You can't be fast, you can't be agile, you can't change things up dramatically. What programmatic is really analogous to a, wow, you okay there? It's analogous to a trading desk. What happens is it's delivering an ad. Actually, let me just explain it to you. So you go on a website and it detects you're there in a browser, and all this happens in 150th of a millisecond. So you go on a website, it detects you're there, it quickly reads your IP address, it goes to an ad server, it finds out who you are from your IP address, it hits an ad network or a bunch of advertisers bid in real time on whether they want you or not, and then that ad gets served up. And that is happening on these big trading desks. So there's a whole host of companies now building algorithms to do that. By 2018, this is going to be a $28 billion business. So money is moving here in droves. And it's fascinating because for advertisers, they are getting this incredible lift on ROI because of this targeting happening in a precise fashion, as opposed to the old world where you're just buying real estate and hoping for the best on who you're getting. Now, the reason that this idea is particularly, I think, important, because if you fast forward to this notion of the Internet of Things, where everything's going to be internet enabled, the car will, your TV will, your home will, billboards will. Well, billboards are probably going to be the next thing. Once this system gets pioneered of how you can micro-target and serve up this stuff in real time, there's no reason why this thing isn't just going to go great guns and go across media serving across the Internet of Things. A little history lesson on here too. big data is terribly, terribly, terribly important. If there's anything, I think I wanted one thing to walk out tattooed on your brains about how the sea change is going to happen, it's this. Companies used to get data by buying lists from newspapers or magazines, or you can buy it from local governments on area codes, where you just get a flat-footed list of people's names and addresses. And sometimes you can buy email addresses too, but you don't know much more than that, and then people would cold call and send direct mail. But because of the advent of social networks and basically the larger internet, because we are all telegraphing this vast amount of information about us and leaving traces, there is a massive world that has emerged that is mining this data, and the opportunity for advertisers to uniquely target people based on this data. So you can buy all categories of stuff. I mean, some people are probably sick of me hearing this example, but I love it because it just shows you the lunacy or the madness or how wonderful it is that you can, on the web, buy men in trouble. And all that is IP addresses of dudes who have gone to jewelry sites and flower sites in like a small compressed area. So I put that out there to give you a sense of what's possible, because we're going to be able to hyper-target people via big data through precise messaging. And you know, if it's precise messaging on the right person, it's more likely to be highly effective and resonate with that person and be an incredible ROI on that. And then lastly, the Internet of Things. Who knows when, and I don't profess to put a date on this, but it seems quite logical that the notion that we were going on our device to get on the internet will disappear at some juncture. And our homes will become internet enabled, our cars will, our lives will. It'll probably happen first in enterprise, then it's going to happen in governments, then it'll happen in homes, then it'll happen in our daily lives. And we're already seeing this in things today. Nest, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the thermostat Nest. It's an internet-enabled thermostat. It was bought by Google. I think last year they bought them. And I have it in my home, and it's massively saved us money because, you know, you can control it. But actually, my husband was controlling the heat from our house in Los Angeles from London, to give you a sense of what these things can do. There's a whole host of hotels who are testing apps, so you don't have keys anymore, that it will come from your phone when you go to a hotel room. So it's already starting to happen. So I really don't think it's a far-fetched scenario that I'll wake up in the morning and the mirror will be my screen and say, Mitch, it's 72 degrees today, or it's going to rain. Here are your meetings. You told me to remind you about this. Oh, the kids have this going on. Because it knows, I mean, it's internet-able to me. And you know what? I bet that's also going to be some forum for an advertiser to get a hold of me if I've given that advertiser permission. The incredible thing about this, I think it's by the year 2020, it means there's going to be 40 million exact exabytes of data out there. So if we think there's a lot of data around us today, it would just blow your mind when you think the Internet of Things. We're going to have, you know, 20 million internet-enabled things putting out data about us. So with all those things as the backdrop, let's have a little dialogue about the implications if you're in the world of marketing communications. Evolution. The CMO is going to have to dramatically evolve to be a leader and a good leader in this environment. I talked about big data, so the CMO is going to have somewhat of an analytic mind or understand that. The ideal candidate is going to be someone who both has data chops and the creative and strategic chops to understand where their brand needs to show up in this new world of media proliferation. And the evolution of that CMO is going to have to still, as I showed you from earlier slide on ad spend, that old world's still going on. The TV, print, radio land is still going on, so you're going to have to both live in that world and this new world. Secondly, you look at that 500 billion of all those people employed in that industry, of the advertising industry, and the question is that industry going to reinvent itself, or will it be withered and replaced with something? Now, this is not it's not meant to be a pejorative statement by any means the leader of every one of those holding companies that I talked about is above 70 years old. Their company was not based on technology. Their business comes primarily from the old world. They're sitting on nice little profits, annual growth about 8%. So you would sitting there going, are these people really going to reinvent that company and move it to the technology world? Now, Publicis, there's some who are trying. Publicis just made an acquisition of Sapient for $3 billion. I think it went through last week. So they're trying to reinvent themselves, but the question is someone else going to come in and do a better job? My money, quite frankly, is on the holding company that comes in and builds the new type of holding company with technology at the center. It also begs the question on what type of skills do people going to need in this new world? And I think it's actually quite, germane for the folks here when you think about it. What are you going to need to be successful? Traditionally, we've taught people public relations, we've taught them research, we've taught them creative, maybe they've done media, and we've been very siloed in kind of marketing communications because they're different career track. But I posit that because of the proliferation of media, everything needs strategic communication at its core. And employers are going to have to either retrain their people, reshape their people. I mean, even we were talking, what's the curriculum for that person of the future? Because employers are going to want specialists. But in this world, it isn't just about PR, because PR is mobile, PR is social, PR is a piece of creative that you put on a social site. I mean, incredible blurring lines when you think about the talent and the core skill set that you're going to need here. And the most interesting man in the world, who is that? Well, my bias, it is, of course, technical people. Now, the reason I say this is it's people who are going to be able to navigate these swaths and swaths of data are the data analytic type of person. So that's a unique role. And I think we're also seeing now a great example of this thing called growth hacking. We've seen companies out of nowhere emerge: Pinterest, Dropbox, Groupon, Zinga, Instagram. I could keep going. And how these companies have come out of nowhere and just ramped their customers is through this thing called growth hacking. Now, it used to be that there was a marketing department and a product development department. And now we're seeing these things come together where you have a hybrid marketer who knows code or knows how to manage people with code. And what that person is doing is constantly iterating. Either using internet tools, A/B testing, different landing pages, different analytic models, different approaches of coding, and each time iterating their product where the product is helping them market, till eventually they have this customer acquisition wheel that has a multiplier effect that bootstraps them in the numbers that we're seeing. So that's why I believe those skills are going to be terribly important. And then, of course, machines. I talked about programmatic. Now, currently in the media industry, there are an awful lot of people in very highly paid jobs still doing the old world type things where we do the deal, we do the fax, we do the follow-up email, and so on. Now, there's one school of thought that says, well, isn't it great because these machines will come in, be more efficient, advertisers will be happy, and those really smart people in media can go and do something more strategic, and we can apply that IQ to something else. But there's also another school of thought that says, well, we might not need those people. And you could see a situation where you need some IQ people managing the machines, but you won't need the machines in droves. So the other implication, and this is like all the way up here now, but I think it's worth putting out there, is just this whole notion of machine learning. We are getting to a stage where we are teaching computers to learn in the way that humans do. I think both Google and Microsoft research are, if you can go onto the web and you can read about this, where they've done a bunch of tests where actually machines are outperforming human beings on certain tasks. And the reason that I just wanted to raise this, because there's this algorithm called deep learning, where there's some profound things going on with computers. It's teaching computers to speak, to hear, to translate, to see. And the reason that I highlight this is, I mean, it's real. People have performing computers that do this. So if you think about we're building that capability, now it's not obviously available. I'm not quite at Minority Report yet. But when you think about that is happening, it could be a sea change as big as the Industrial Revolution. But the difference is we stopped at the steam engine. The steam engine didn't keep multiplying. It was like, okay, there was riots. We had to close down the mills, and the steam engine came, and the world was a lot different because of the steam engine. The difference here is that machine learning is going to keep going because computers don't stop learning. So, you know, it beyond comprehension. There's going to be so much debate about this very category and artificial intelligence. Indeed, there's a lot going on already. And then, of course, privacy. You know, I've painted quite the rosy picture about, hey, isn't it great? Advertisers can do X, advertisers can do Y. But at the end of the day, you are telegraphing information about yourself. And I think there's probably a lot of people have no idea that they're telegraphing what they are about themselves. So this is a topic that there's going to be so much debate as we see these breakthroughs happen, as industries evolve. Quite interestingly, you're going to see, well, governments get involved. Outside the United States on this topic, governments are actually more active than they have been in the United States. Right now, it's a few politicians, some activists, you know, who are constantly vocal about it, but you haven't seen a shift in things happening. In Germany, for example, you cannot, it's illegal to target people on religious beliefs or by certain demographics. You've got the right to be forgotten, as you probably know that Google's had that ruling against it in Europe. So you see pockets around the world, but for the most part, there aren't the guardrails, and we're letting the industry govern itself in this regard. And I read this fascinating story today, which actually I thought was quite topical given this. There's a story out today that around the Super Bowl, sex traffickers come into wherever the Super Bowl happens to be. So this year it was Phoenix. So they do this every year, that there's a government team that tries to analyze what's going on to close down these sex traffickers because they know they come to the Super Bowl. Well, they've made this tool, I think it's called Medic or Medics, and it will, what they used to do is go on Craigslist and every one of these classifieds and find out the ads, and then try and match if the telephone was the same, and see if there was any common denominator or patterns that they could see in all these classifieds that turn up in Phoenix around the time of the Super Bowl. Well, they made this algorithm and this product called Medic where it can take immediately, see which phone numbers are the same, to the point where they've got pictures of the women to see if the hotel background is the same. So, you know, there's a pattern match because they're in the same locale where they're being exploited. And what they managed to do with this is figure out where the ad got posted from what device, and at what geographic location. So you're like, wow, you know, what a pioneering thing. Law enforcement's getting rid of the bad guys. But at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, there's technology that got to a device, that got to geography that the government has, that I always be able to backtrack. And it was just interesting. It was in the journal today, reading the debate, because you've got what happened, and then you've got the privacy pundits saying, Jesus Christ, and then you've got the government saying, well, it's government money, so we've put it in the public domain. This algorithm is now in the public domain. Then you're thinking, well, aren't drug traffickers going to figure that out, and sex traffickers? So anyway, it was like interesting food for thought, and I thought very topical, you know, given this topic. So in closing, this is me. No, it's not me. But this is meant to describe my enthusiasm and optimism for this great new world ahead. I spend my time largely angel investing and on several boards, and I am not spinning you. I think I'm envious of you. What you're about to go into and what's going to be possible is going to be so exciting. I believe consumers are going to win with the right permission. I think there's a world where I get an ad that really resonates, instead of the crap that we all get that has nothing to do with us when we're on our phone or when we're on the web. Wouldn't it be great if it was something germane to your life that was going to help you? And I think some of that's going to be possible with the right permission. So I'm an incredible optimist about what's coming, super envious of you guys, and I wish you every success. And with that, I'd love your Comments, questions, or thoughts?
Any questions? Okay.
So, thank you for coming. That was great.
So my name is Daniel Atwater. I'm an alum, and I work for the Pollock PR Marketing Group. We're a firm based in Century City. We do a lot of work with technology clients, financial services, et cetera. So you mentioned about internet integration in the homes and being fully integrated in our society. One of the things that I saw today on CNBC was the editor of the Business Insider publication
Henry Blodgett.
Right. Talk about the fact that enterprise technology will be, it's an industry where there's so many players that consolidation will really happen in a strong way. That was his projection this morning. So my thought is, if enterprise technology is the driver behind internet integration and consumption by consumers, and we know that that consumption by consumers will drive to marketers' ability to communicate with them in real time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on M&A activity in enterprise technology as it relates to marketers' abilities to connect with consumers through internet integration?
Well, the enterprise guys should do very well in this. And I'm not talking about the consumer aspect, because most companies, if they're thinking about this future that's coming and how they might get reinvented in some fashion, they've got to think about infrastructure. They've got to think about data in their business. They've got to think about cloud. They've got to think about analytics. And that's all going to be big servers, routers, so on and so forth. So the guys he was probably talking about, Cisco, Juniper, IBM, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, in the hardware business, there has been consolidation. There continues to be. I don't know if it's just going to be one or two players in that space, because this market is so, I mean, it's, when you think about it, it's every industry is not, there's no industry that's going to be untouched by this on a global basis. So will it just be a couple of players? I'm not so sure. And you know, if you look at Nest that I showed you, that Nest didn't need Cisco and huge infrastructure and everything to innovate. So there's a bunch of, for the Internet of Things, it isn't super reliant on just those enterprise people. Business and government, absolutely, though.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
How much of a concern is the ongoing discussion about broadband reclassification, especially given what's going on and what we're projecting with everything running off of mobile?
You mean the government wanting to restrict the internet? Yeah, I mean, you could argue both sides of this. Should we be able to pay if we want better bandwidth? It is a capitalist society. Yes. Should everyone have access at the same time? Yes. I can argue both sides of this. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Noel. I thought that Sony ad was very interesting, the fact that it was crowdsourced, and that kind of led me to the question, to what extent is Microsoft's advertising and marketing done in-house versus outsourced to different agencies? Is there like sort of a line that you cut when it comes to creating conceptions and delivery?
Well, I've been gone 3 years, but I can tell you when I was there, we outsourced. And I believe that people internally, knowing the culture of Microsoft, you're better off people who are going to be risk takers, big thinkers, to open your eyes to things that you wouldn't normally be, because you're in a large corporation doing the thing every day, going to meetings, doing email, that type of thing. The people who are not in that environment and can be big whiteboard thinkers, arguably, are the better people to kind of that creative idea, bring it to life. That said, given the proliferation of media today, we're increasingly seeing more firms bring it in-house because it's just so hard to keep track of it. I'm on the Unilever advisory board, and it's one of the things they wrestle with a lot because their PR agency doesn't talk to their ad agency. They have 16 social agencies in the United States and so on and so forth, which just makes it a nightmare for the internal person because all they end up doing is trying to traffic instead of doing real work. So we've seen Patagonia's done it, Apple's done it, Unilever has done it a little, Google's done it, and actually, those 2 ads that were in the Super Bowl, Microsoft did them in-house. Yeah, lady here.
Hi, my name is Paula. I'm staff here at USC. As the world becomes more engaged with media and internet, what do you think are the implications for marketing for this ethnic diversity that is happening both worldwide and here in the United States? I mean, especially Los Angeles, New York, where you see that really we can no longer call Latinos a minority because they're not
right.
a minority any longer.
Well, I think it's truly fantastic. If you're saying what's the opportunity for marketers, like you know, if I wanted to market to African Americans when I was at Microsoft, you know, you're going to BET, you're going to Ebony. It's it's the same flat-footed things. Okay, I know I'm going to get to some of the core audience, but I know there's a whole host of people who are African American who don't read those things that I'm not getting to. But when you think about what's possible now, because you're probably online, we're all online, we're telegrading stuff about us, we're probably saying what gender we are, and then if we get to the right questionnaire, or people like even pattern match, like some of these companies will pattern match where you live and say, okay, you know, that's likely they're going to be of the following ethnic group because I know the zip code, or they gave their house, or so on. So I think it's going to be an incredible opportunity for marketers to do more breakthrough stuff in that category than we've been able to do before, because we just had these flat-footed tools that blanketed, you know, those groups without any real insight. Man at the back.
If you were graduating from Hannaford today, what career would you be gunning for?
Tech.
But what in tech? I mean, you brought up 5 or 6 things: privacy, big data.
What you're good at. I mean, it really is. I believe you should only take a job at what you're good at. There's a whole host of stuff in tech, right? There's the pointy head part of tech, which if you're an engineering type or a coder or an analytics and so on, but then that product has to be marketed, and it needs people who are creative, who are strategic communicators, who can bring that product to life in some fashion. So I think it all depends about what your skill set. And you have to decide what your risk level is, because there's a lot of tech out there that is unproven. I mean, you could be on the rocket ship that is Instagram, or you could be one of the hosts of hundreds of companies that just fall by the wayside that we never hear about. Or you could just go to one of the big 10 and decide to, okay, I'm going to get an MBA in Amazon or an MBA in Google. And you do your 2 years, you get it on your resume, and then you're ever so useful to so many places. Lady here.
Hi, I'm Kemta. I'm an undergrad IRGE major, but I want to know what got you interested in communications originally.
Luck. It was like, I thought marketing was kind of sexy. I thought tech was sexy. I did a business management degree. I specialized in human relations, not marketing. And it was my first job. Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of people here who are gunning for entertainment. And after spending a week with you, Gabe and I know that you're skeptical of the future of entertainment. So when you think about these factors that you've laid out, mobile, open systems, big data, the Internet of Things, is this an opportunity, cumulatively, is this an opportunity for the big entertainment, the traditional entertainment companies that so many of our students are interning with and so forth, or is this sort of the death knell for their fortunes? Like, how do you read the future of entertainment in this new ecosystem?
I think it's well, a couple of things. Entertainment obviously saw what happened to music, so they know what that movie looks like, right? So let's just put that one out there. There's great innovation happening on the intersection of content and technology, and a lot of that is in the LA area, right? We see Maker, Awesomeness, and so on. So clearly there's growth, people figuring out, building new distribution. And then I would say the entertainment industry really is every industry needs to figure out how to reinvent itself before it gets done to them, right? We can all see this stuff coming. It's whether we want to mobilize ourselves about it. It's like, did the thermostat guys see Nest coming? No. I'm sure there's countless thermostat guys who are like, why didn't we think about the cloud and controlling ourselves? The guys who make locks for hotels, did they think about it? So, I know the entertainment industry is really wrestling with this as their business shrinks. How do we maintain that distribution? It's still a very tough business on, roll the dice, is this one going to be a success? It's not, to have that predictable model.
And then just to follow up real quickly, you're not a sociologist and you're not in public policy, although you were hired at Microsoft to defend Microsoft from a federal case. But when I hear a lot of these factors, I think that it's so hard not to think the world is going to become even more stratified in a two-tier scenario of the fast and the brilliant, winning in this scenario. And people that are already struggling, communities that are already struggling to keep up, will be absolutely ghettoized. You know what I'm saying? Like in an even more stark fashion, because the Internet of Things probably isn't going to spread everywhere equally. I mean, it's going to be like, unless the government or some entity or some set of partnerships activates it to kind of become widespread. So what's your feeling on the kind of creative partnerships that need to happen between big tech and big government to make sure, or to try to make sure this doesn't just produce science fiction-like stratification?
Yeah, I'll probably answer this not in the way that you want, but because I'm not a sociologist, but to channel Bill Gates for a moment, he would say, they don't need smartphones, they need food. They need toilets that don't cause diseases. They need vaccination. They need to be able to help grow crops when there is a drought and so on. And that needs to come first before we think about things like that. I know it's not an ideal answer, but I think if a government's got $1 to spend to save a life or give someone a smartphone.
Oh, I think this gentleman right there.
Hi there, I'm David Hidari, and I'm on the Journalism Masters program here. You've been in this sort of tech sector, or around it, for the last 20, 25 years, and you're now an angel investor. Do you have any regrets as to any companies that you wish you'd got in on that you didn't?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are. I mean, there's a bunch that I invest with my husband, and there's this one. It's just like a random one, but just shows you there's this company called RadPad, and you guys might use it because it's an app to find housing in LA, and it's like really cool for apartments, and you flip through and stuff. And we took that meeting, and I was like, no way, not doing that. Da 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 da, And then 2 months later, these guys get bought for $20 million. I mean, they were angel guys, just raising for their seed fund. It's just like, oh my goodness. So yeah, you come across stuff. Like I have friends didn't get in on Uber real early. Like my friend in LA, he passed on it. That it really is a crapshoot on this stuff. That it is, you think but you really don't. You've got to eyeball it the best that you can. But at the end of the day, and things come out of nowhere. You think you know a market, and then squish, someone creates that feature in a Google product or a Microsoft product, and then wow. Yeah, this man here. Sorry.
Okay. So with that's fine. So with technology becoming more and more integrated in our everyday lives, do you think there ever needs to be a limit set, or should we just let the demand of the consumer kind of just run rapid, and whatever happens, happens? Like, for example, like the thermostat can, as soon as you walk in a room, it knows what your ideal settings are, and go in a fast food place. Do you think that ever needs to be just stopped so that humans can do what we've done for the last, for forever, or should that?
Very possibly. I think I'm the wrong person to ask because I'm such an optimist. I'm sure there's plenty of people in the world who are going to say, no way. I'm not comfortable that everything you being telegraphed about me in my own home, the sanctity of my home. I think there's going to be a heck of a lot of people who are in that category who will limit the stuff.
There's a company in Sweden or Switzerland that actually you have to have a microchip serve into your hand in order to access their stuff. And you're seeing like microchips becoming more and more integrated, like healthcare services, sort of like store records. Like how does that? You know, like is that something we should?
Even for me, that seems freaky.
Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to leave just a little bit of time if you want to meet with Mitch afterwards, but she's been so delightful all week and so generous, so we're going to end it here formally, but you're more than welcome to hang around for a few minutes afterwards.
It's really been great.
Thank you so much.
There's a sort of radio interview.